Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, it's a little bit experimental on my end.
Yeah.
I've got some podcasts that are yet to be released with my cousin, and I'm sure it'll be very similar topics to what we'll discuss.
Yeah, what's your cousin into?
I need to connect you guys because you guys should be chatting weekly based on your channel. Yeah, for sure. Theology, all that good stuff.
Deep ideas.
Deep ideas, yeah. So, tell me about your podcast.
Okay, so I started my podcast. I mean, you mentioned theology is the first thing associated with it. Not that I'm trying to avoid that being the center. I mean, it's a big part of my life. That's the stuff that I think about. But I started the podcast as sort of like a meta podcast, where it was like a podcast about, not necessarily about podcasting, but like just noticing the moment of like, okay, we're all starting to listen to these like 2-hour, 3-hour conversations. What is it that we find so interesting about conversation? Or, I mean, obviously people have been having conversations forever, but like, so our initial episode was just like a 2-hour discussion of like, what is a conversation, which was a very weird, but it ended up being a really insightful conversation.
Okay.
So I think I wanted to start it partly because I felt like, okay, there's a weird moment that we're listening to this more often. So there's a place for something like this, but also I felt like with the amount of kind of content that's filling all of our lives.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's an insane amount of like input, but we're kind of progressively trading off our ability to actually communicate very well, I feel like. Sure.
And even digest it. Like,
yeah.
I'm guilty. I'm probably the same as you, and hammering 4 hours a day through my ears. And and then if you can't discuss it, how much are you really absorbing?
Well, I think that's like you said, the word digestion is like, that's probably a big part of what conversation is as well. It's like, so it's like we're putting, throwing out a random number, but like we're putting out tons and tons of stuff into our brains constantly, but we don't really chew on it very well. So we don't, for one thing, we don't even know kind of how it's affecting us, but then we haven't really learned how to process it yet and do anything with it, I guess. Right. It's just kind of any effect that's having us is like kind of totally passive, I guess.
Right. So you wanted to start the podcast because you were listening to so many podcasts.
I guess it was more that I was listening to podcasts, but it was like social media, it was YouTube. It's like, there's so much just content, I guess.
Right.
And so the podcast for me was an opportunity to, I guess, practice talking about stuff again. And the topic was a little bit wider than that too, because I noticed like, it seems like it gets worse every year, that like political tensions, people struggle to talk to each other. I was struggling to have compassion for people who saw things differently than me. And then it started to be not just people that I could sort of brush off that weren't part of my life, but became family members. And it was like, okay.
Especially during COVID.
Right, exactly. A lot of this just like kind of bubbled to the surface. So it's like, shit, I need to figure out, I mean, if I can't figure out how to have a meaningful conversation with somebody with a radically different perspective than me, then pretty soon I'm not going to have a family anymore. Right. And that was kind of where it was like, okay, I need to figure out some way to actually practice this, like work this muscle out a little bit. Right.
And podcasting is so intentional.
Yeah.
It's like we are going to have a conversation and the conversation will work. It's not just going to devolve into whatever, leaving.
Well, there's like a performance angle, I guess, to it, where you're committed to, okay, well, we're here, we decided to do this, we better not let this spiral into. So it's like, I think sometimes maybe I needed that. I thought that was like a nice, anyways, added pressure to like, okay, I am going to be patient. I am going to be considerate. I'm going to be charitable, and I'm going to have a good conversation. Like, it's like, I'm going to put myself in a situation where there's no escape from like, I've just got to learn how to do this well.
Right. So I want to back up a little bit, I guess, just because I've dug into your channel a little bit, and my viewers won't have. And it comes up in a certain number of your conversations, is that you were raised evangelical and then fill in the blank.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
what was your kind of, an hour here. But.
So that could be, I mean, I've been trying to explore my answer to that question for a good chunk of what this podcast project has been, because as soon as you start actually having real conversations, you start asking some pretty hard questions, I think. And then I think approaching difficult questions in a properly kind of humble way, you don't necessarily end up with a simple answer. And so it's a question, for me, it's a deep identity question. So evangelicalism, that's like a type of, for people who don't know, it's a version, a strain, I don't know, of Christianity. I guess probably associated mostly with North American Christianity, like Protestant North American Christianity, and I guess also really associated with like kind of Holy Spirit culture, which is like
Southern.
It could be like Southern. I mean, I don't think Southern Baptist wouldn't fit in that category, because I think that's a different denomination. But it's like there's connections between all these communities. But like my experience of evangelicalism is like a really deep focus on like a personal relationship with God, right? And kind of exploring very spiritual, like music.
Okay.
Yeah, it was music and like jumping around and like.
Okay. So I've never been to an evangelical service.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not like a Catholic. You walk in like very somber. It's not like a bunch of icons. It's like you get in there and it's a bunch of probably kind of geeky people playing, but really heartfelt music and raising their hands. Yep. And usually singing together. And yeah, it's like it's such an interesting thing for me. Like you said, okay, so I haven't even got to answer the question yet. You asked me, okay, so I grew up evangelical and then what? And it's like, every time I try to think about it again, it's like there's so much tension there, because on one side of it...
Let me interrupt you quickly, because I think to some degree in my mind, and I think in a lot of people's mind, evangelical is synonymous with, like being preachy.
Offend me, yeah. No, I was going to say, just go for it.
Yeah. But being like, there's so many people who are casual Catholics, right? But not.
It's like evangelism, right?
Yeah,
it's like the other words, right?
That's what I was looking for. Yeah, evangelizing.
Yeah. I was actually doing some looking into like where the name evangelical came from. I think evangel has something to do with somebody's take on just the gospel itself. It doesn't necessarily like linguistically it didn't always mean like some people that go out and like sort of try to shove their tradition down other people's throats.
Right.
I
feel like that definition came afterwards.
Yeah. It's like, how did that happen? But yeah, that wasn't obviously another big part of, especially my experience growing up in that culture, was that's what my family did, is that I literally come from 3 generations back of people who kind of felt so strongly about their spiritual convictions that it's like we need to go around and tell people about this.
Share the
good news. Yeah. So it was like, it started with my grandparents, and then my parents took over their ministry. And so I grew up on the road, like touring 9 months a year, playing music in an evangelical touring ministry thing, right? Where like my dad was preaching. We had a family band. We all played together. Yeah, it was so.
So there was no home base though. It was a touring?
No, there was a home base. Okay, that's what I said. I did grow up in Brantford.
No, but as far as a church goes,
there sort of was. I mean, yeah, it's like obviously when we were home, we would go to the same church consistently. It's just we weren't home that much. It was like 3 months a year, sometimes less, sometimes more. As it's kind of got later. So I mean, part of this whole story is that evangelicalism seems like it's sort of winding down in some ways. Okay. Because you see a big angle of it was kind of the touring, like the sharing the gospel with different people. Mm-hmm. That is just feeling, I guess it's sort of gotten a bad name in some ways. But even like within the church community, these churches are not as interested in having kind of outside touring people come in and like share with them. They're kind of more kind of hunkering down, like this is our thing. We're going to do it our way, right? So there was, as we've got up to like this moment, my parents kind of continued on with their ministry, and it's like it's gone from like, multiple. So like it used to be with my grandparents were doing it, they would be doing church services 6 or 7 times a week, sometimes multiple times a day, right? This was like people were people went to church.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it kind of gradually went down to, I remember as a kid, it was pretty normal to maybe there'd be a Wednesday thing, and then there was Sunday morning and Sunday evening church, right?
Okay.
And then by the end of it, Wednesdays were becoming quite rare, and nobody really wanted to go Sunday. I guess it was like probably just Sunday morning or maybe just Sunday evening. I think probably ended up just being just Sunday morning a lot of times. I think that's probably how a lot of evangelical churches, that's their kind of schedule now. It's just like they do something Sunday morning, and then maybe there's certain events throughout the week, but those are kind of more optional.
Right. So what was your, I think like anyone who was raised going to church and, there comes a time when you're 11 to whatever it be, 19, and kids are questioning you why you believe in God because their parents say God doesn't exist. And that's a bunch of nonsense. And then you have to defend your beliefs.
Oh yeah.
And then the exercise starts.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I kind of took this personally. My mom always told me she named me Garrett because that meant brave warrior.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to be a warrior for the faith,
Yeah.
So I didn't necessarily, I wasn't like trying to tear these kids apart, beat them up if they question my faith, but I was into, we called it apologetics, right? That's where you like learn all of the arguments to defend your faith.
Okay,
and so people would ask me, and I would be like, yeah, this is how I know that evolution isn't true, okay? This is how I know that God is real and he exists. And I got the math. It works out here,
Yep. Yeah. And if you look here, the chariots are here in the.
Yeah. I can decode it. It's all in here in the book,
Yeah.
So that really drew me in. I was all into that, especially even all throughout high school. Yeah.
Did you go to a public high school?
No, touring most of the year, right? That wasn't really possible. So
homeschooled.
I was homeschooled. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe you weren't as exposed as a lot of kids were.
No, definitely not.
Right. Did you go to university?
I was going hard, man. I went to Bible college.
Wow.
Okay. And this wasn't even like an accredited, like real Bible college. This was like a kind of an indie. I won't say it wasn't real. Yeah. There aren't a lot of schools that you could transfer the credits from this school to.
Got it.
That's what we'll say.
Got it.
But it was a school primarily focused on sort of training people up to become missionaries and go to other countries and,
right.
and teach, spread the gospel, spread the good news.
Yep.
Right.
And so was that was your plan?
Well,
is your plan? I don't know.
No. Yeah. So both of my sisters before me had gone to this school. And so I was just trying to figure out, probably like most kids at that age, like, okay, it seems like I could go to this school, I could go to that school. I don't know. I have no idea what to do. How do you be an adult? And so I was just, but the question for me was a bit deeper because I was like, okay, how do I be a good Christian? Like, what does that mean? And so I thought, I had to kind of just look at the examples before me, and I was like, okay, I guess if you're really taking this stuff seriously, if you really want to figure it out, you got to go to Bible school, and you got to like, get super, super real with it. And so I was like, okay, I thought maybe there's like some threshold I can pass and become like a true, deeply mature Christian, and then I'll know.
Then you'll know that you know.
Yeah, exactly. I guess, but I wasn't necessarily drawn to like the missionary lifestyle.
Right.
I thought, okay, I need to go to this school and like really learn how to do it, I guess. I don't know. It wasn't a specific thing I was trying to learn how to do. I figured I'll figure out what it is, what's my calling, I guess, at school, right?
Right. And then, so forgive me for my ignorance. How old are you?
I'm 27 now.
Okay. And that's not the path anymore to become a missionary.
No, well, I didn't necessarily commit to that at any point at the school, but yeah, it was kind of progressively clear to me throughout my experience there that I don't think I want to do this. And they would kind of push it harder almost every year. It was like, okay, they would do like a special event every year where all the different missionaries that were sponsored by that school would come back, and they would share stories about like, this is what's going on and the mission field needs you. And I was like, yeah, but I don't know. That seems kind of weird. And partly, okay, I'll move the story forward here because as I went to the end of school, I started running into those sorts of questions I would get really excited about answering when I was in high school, that I had answers for in high school, that I started to find some that I couldn't answer as well. And I had a growing bag of questions that didn't have immediate answers, that I just couldn't reconcile. I couldn't reconcile them with my faith. I didn't really know what to do with them. And I had a good friend at school that I ended up spending a lot of time with and having a lot of long conversations with. And we were both kind of wrestling with this because we kept on getting, just deeper into the weeds of stuff that it was like, I don't know if I could find a satisfying answer for that. I don't know if, and so, it was just this huge amount of tension that grew, because on the other side of it, these people who were here were really passionate about what they believed in. I was passionate. Mm-hmm. I saw people talking about, being able to sort of work miracles, like classic, the stories in the Bible of like Jesus heals the leper or brings the girl back to life. It's like these people believe deeply in that stuff, and they're like, yeah, that's for now. We can still do that if we believe that Jesus lives in us. Right. And it was like, and I had experiences that seemed like maybe that is what happened. I learned to pray for people, and I kind of hoped that they would be healed. And I had some situations where it was still, I look back and I don't know what happened there. It seems like something positive happened. It seems like, did they get healed? Did they get healed because I prayed for them? Yeah. How does that work? Right? So, I mean, when you have in one hand a huge bag of unanswerable questions, and then on the other hand, a bunch of experiences that you don't know what to do with either, it's I don't know, it's pretty hard. So I didn't really have a clear direction after I was done school either. Right.
Huh. But your family's obviously fine with whatever career path you take and all that.
Yeah, I mean, they were obviously more, considering how deep they are in this, they were more excited about the idea of me like doing something in ministry. Sure. Right. But no, I mean, I have a pretty good relationship with my parents, and they've been, happy to see me succeed at whatever I can do. Right. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, where do you want me to go next?
No. I just wanted to, kind of paint the picture a little bit. And because I stumbled across your channel because you're talking to all these, all these super interesting guys as far as I'm concerned, and kind of guys who are right under Jordan Peterson, who he's constantly going back and forth with, and listening to so much Jonathan Pajot lately. Like, the guy is a genius. Yeah. And so clearly you still have this very, Christian there's bent. But certainly a desire for truth. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so, and I don't want there to be a hard, disagreement between those two statements that I'm a Christian, but I still care about truth. That shouldn't be a
no. They're not mutually exclusive at all. Yeah.
But I mean, you can say that and people can relate to it, and they're like, okay, because a lot of the Christians you might have met in your life, it's like, especially, certain extremely ideological Christians, it's like they didn't seem open to talking about anything. They seem ignorant about certain things or whatever. It's like
anyone can be, whatever they believe.
Sure. Yeah. So, yeah, I went through a time of trying to figure out, okay, can I call myself a Christian anymore? How do I approach that? Because by the time I got done school, I really had no idea what I wanted to do. I kind of just took a year and was by myself. I mean, it was an especially kind of unhealthy circumstance because I moved away to go to school, right? And then I came home. But I came home not to like a place that I had spent, 17, 18 years growing up in and building deep relationships with, right? I came home to a place that I had spent a few months a year in and had friends that had all, that I was friends with, but they kind of had their own lives, and they kind of had their own deeper friends that they saw all the time. Sure. And so it's like I came home and everybody had kind of moved on with their lives, I guess. And I didn't really have any place to go. So I just kind of sat with my thoughts and sat with, with all these questions, and I just kind of spiraled. Okay. I got really, I probably now I would look back and I say I got deeply depressed. And I kind of had to argue my way out of it. In it's interesting because I don't think that that's kind of the answer that I would always, submit as like the way to get through a deep depression or a deep struggle with questions, is that you need to just find the answer. But I did wrestle with some of these questions until I found at least something that was good enough to keep me looking. I got to the place where, I was questioning everything. I was like, I don't know. It was like, it kind of went from theological to philosophical questions of like,
right.
How do I know? It was like, it went from how do I know that God exists to how do I know that I exist?
Right.
And then it was like, holy shit, how do I know that I exist?
Right.
And then it's just like it comes down, I guess, to questions about what knowing is. I don't know. It can sound really stupid if it's like if that question doesn't hit you in a way that feels like it matters, then it's like, why would you ask that?
Right.
But for some reason, for me, it mattered. And then I got to this place where it was like, how do I move on? I don't know if anything exists. I had like a Matrix moment, I guess, where it was just like everything feels fake.
Right.
Right.
So how did you build yourself? Because it's so funny, like the way you said that. I think it would probably be easy to question. Question. You said you questioned your way out, or answered your way out. Like the rational mind could probably question your way into the depression. And I always think, the way out of places like that, for me anyways, are, through action, not through contemplation. Through just going out and going
just go for a drive.
Go for a run.
Go for a run. Yeah. Go be in the world. Like it's like you'll stop wondering if the world is true if you just go do something in it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I think I needed at least some, like, just because that whole realm of like of arguing and of like, I mean, that had become a deep part of me since I was a teenager, right? I needed to at least have some foundation there. I needed to have something to work with.
Yeah.
And ultimately what it came down to, it wasn't necessarily so much an answer to all of the questions, but it was just, I got to a frame that I was a little bit happier with for how to approach argument and how to approach sort of rationality, which was just that, like, I guess it's just that I don't take anything for granted. The only things I get to sort of know or have supposed certainty on are I only get to gamble on certainty, I guess. And it's like, so from there it was like, okay, it's not that everything doesn't exist, certainly. It's that, okay, I get to have the experience of things existing if I'm willing to sort of have faith in them.
Well, that's right? Exactly what I was going to say, is like, that's where faith comes in, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Because, and that it was good,
right.
And that that your actions hopefully will produce the desired outcome.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It becomes much more like, I think it was a helpful frame though, because, I guess especially when I'm having these conversations when I'm a teenager, it's like a fundamentally different question or there's always this sort of dichotomy of like, okay, well, why do you believe in God? I only believe in things that I can see. But it's like, when I went down that rabbit hole of, okay, what do I believe? And then realizing that every act of belief involves a setting aside of totally rational things you could think that would cause you not to believe anything. Like when you frame every action of belief as one of faith, then it's still a huge jump to go and believe in some sort of invisible being or abstract being or something like that.
Sure.
But it's not a fundamentally different sort of belief than believing in yourself or believing in the person being in front of you.
Right.
Right. It's still the same action. It's just it maybe is a bit more of that action.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes sense. So then, at that time, like, for me, I was always curious, a curious kid, and I'm 3 years older than you, so about the same age.
Okay. Yeah.
And when YouTube came around, it was like, okay, game on. Like, you can look up anything you want, like all these arguments. How do you prove that God exists? How do you I've listened to almost every Alan Watts lecture on YouTube, or stuff like that. And then obviously discovering kind of Jordan Peterson lectures right around whatever 2015 or 16 when he came to prominence.
Okay, so you were a little bit earlier on that train then. Because I was going to say, I don't think I had heard of Jordan Peterson until a bit later on, until probably it was like just shortly before. Okay, maybe it was 2017, I guess.
Okay, so I think it was the first time anything went viral of his. I was like, okay, who is this guy? And then I watched all of his university lectures. I'm like, I'm going to U of T virtually, watching his his psychology lectures, and I was like, this guy is on it. Yeah.
I mean, to date, like that's definitely his most solid stuff. I think it's just those university lectures. That was super, super good, super interesting, super insightful. I mean, that was part of what kind of got me through some of those deeper questions too, was just here was a really, at least to me, a really foreign perspective on Christianity that didn't, it didn't line up with the way that I had been thinking about it, right? But it didn't discard it either. It wasn't sort of disrespectful. It was like, it was just very honest and or I guess it just seemed genuine. It was like, okay, I really want to ask some questions about this.
Right.
And it didn't make some of the same, it didn't fall into the same boxes or the same dichotomies that I had grown up with. I mean, I brought up that there was a strong, like, either you believe in the Bible or you believe in evolution. Like that was
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like, wait, he's talking about the Bible relating to evolution. He's talking about people's minds evolving and then their myths evolving. Like, what?
Actually being an artifact of evolution?
Right. And it's like, but as soon as it just kind of, it broke, I mean, not that it's like, I don't agree with every conclusion he came to or anything like that, but at least it was so important for me, I guess, just to see how you could break those walls down without totally discarding what it is that you're trying to investigate. I had kind of been presented this false dichotomy that you can either just believe it all, or if you start to question it, you're kind of headed down the wrong road and it's a slippery slope,
Really? Okay. Yeah. So what other material or what other thinkers or authors helped build your existential base or your understanding of reality back up enough?
Yeah. I would say I was following along with Michael Gungor. I'm not sure if you've heard of that guy. He was an evangelical guy who wrote some of the most popular songs that were being sung by all these different Christian bands and traveling bands too, right? I think we even sang. Actually, I'm pretty sure we sang some of his songs.
Like fairly popular stuff.
I mean, this thing it was popular within that community, but you would never have heard
within the Christian community or within the evangelical community.
I think more specifically just the evangelical community, which I mean,
so it wouldn't be
to be fair, it was a pretty big community,
right?
But it's you wouldn't have heard of him if you weren't in there,
right?
But he's one of the people I would think of that is a good example of like the ex-evangelical movement, which is another kind of community that's sort of rising up now, and it's a little bit kind of spicy anti-evangelical, like it's a lot of people just kind of talking about their baggage and talking about how much evangelical Christianity fucked them up. And,
yeah.
And so, sorry, to go back to Michael Gungor, he, and sorry, not to even totally dismiss the evangelical movement. I think that's probably important that happens anyways. People need to work through their trauma and stuff like that. But Michael Gungor, he kind of gradually, I was listening to the music and throughout these years of like starting to question his music and his band Gungor, that kind of always reached me, even in those really dark, questioning moments where I just felt like I had no foundation. It was like, he's asking these questions too. This is what I need. And it would like these songs would just, there would be a space. I would just cry listening to these songs sometimes, because it was just like, this is where I'm at. When you feel that, existentially lost, or if you almost like alone, it's nice to know even that somebody else felt that lonely before too. So it's like, even though you're still alone in it, you're not totally alone in terms of across time, people feeling like this,
right?
So but then he started doing a podcast called The Liturgists.
Okay.
And that was originally, it was like, this was at the beginning of podcasting, I guess. It was before podcasting had really
late 2010s or whatever.
I guess. Yeah. So it was like early on, right before I had started going to school, I started listening to his podcasts.
Yep.
Or maybe kind of somewhere in there anyways. But it was like podcasts hadn't just become, an hour or a 2-hour conversation thing like that. Like they hadn't standardized into a form yet. People were really exploring the meaning of like, what is a podcast? So the way they were doing their podcasts was like, it was like a story and some music and like a meditation. It was just like a mixed media thing. And it was really good. Like there was a lot of production value in it, but it was also just really deep ideas that hit me. And I was like, this is worth doing. And that was also my first probably introduction to meditation. Like not just, so I mean, I learned how to pray as a Christian growing up, but I hadn't learned, like prayer for evangelicals is like a very conversational thing, right?
Okay.
It's not like, we don't like really do the Lord's Prayer or anything like that very often. It's usually like, you talk to God like he's your friend. And
right.
You're even taught to sort of visualize it like that. You're taking a walk with Jesus. And you're, hey God, this is what's going on right now, and I really need your help. And it's not like and it's cool. It's kind of interesting. It really, I mean, it taught me. It gave me a deep place in my life and in my consciousness, I guess, for God. And I still don't know, if that picture I have of God that's in there is, the final. It's like I don't even believe that's the final. Like that is what God is. But it's like that's my door, I guess, to it. And it's like,
right.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm jumping around here a little bit, but it's like that. It's like I was brought up within this tradition, and I was given all these tools to interact with that depth of existence, I guess. And it's like whether you want to call it God, whatever you want to call it, it's like it was something really deep, and it was something really emotionally meaningful. I mean, beyond just emotions, I think it felt very meaningful, right? And it's like I can have all the doubts that I have today, but it's like still anything that can get me back to that place. If I can kind of suspend disbelief for a minute, and I can still choose to pray in the way that I did growing up. Sometimes I can still get there. Sometimes I can still do that comfortably, even though I'm kind of half wondering if I'm sort of joking myself as I'm doing it. It's like, it's weird that, I don't know. It's like, you get to the point where you want that back. I don't know. I'm kind of spiraling out in this. Where how did I get here?
But yeah, I know what you mean. And for me, it was always, being growing up a very casual Christian, going to Protestant church every once in a while, and but going to, getting exposed to all of the ideas that you're talking about, going to Christian camp, which most kids' camps were Christian camps at the time for a week at a time, and being told all these things, that you have to have this personal relationship with God. You have to have this conversational relationship with God. And for me, it was always that no one's talking back. I'm not getting answers. It's not a conversation. How do you experience God? And that was kind of a driving question, or a driving force in my, more intellectual, kind of path. Searching is where does the rubber meet the road? Where is the spiritual, like where does it actually take place? Because no one's talking to me. Where is your relation? Where is the relationship with God?
Did you ever talk to like an imaginary friend when you were a kid? No. I was not bad at that. And I mean, I think I was probably more desperate for it because of, being sort of living alone on a bus with nobody but my siblings, right? Yeah. And I had a pretty close relationship with all my siblings because you got to do that when that's all you got. Those are your people, right? And I'm thankful for them. But I did, I don't know. I have a particular memory of like a week that I had just like tried it out, and I had a similar like experience of like getting to know this person, and then wondering if it was real, and then kind of like letting it go because like, maybe
you're talking an imaginary friend here.
I'm talking about imaginary friend.
Okay. Yeah.
And
so
that's
maybe I'm
because
just not predisposed, because a lot of kids have imaginary friends, right? But
but it wasn't like it's like I knew I was doing the work of imagining this friend.
Okay.
but yet still it was interesting to talk to him.
Okay.
And that's what's weird, is like, okay, why would it be interesting to talk to myself?
Right.
Right? Like, I already know what I'm going to say.
Right.
And so I struggle with, I think probably part of the way I think about it now is that part of what's happening when you are praying and sort of hearing something back from God, and I don't mean, I don't know the answer to this stuff, but I'm just theorizing.
Yeah.
I think part of what could be happening is that you can build a good relationship with a good part of yourself it's like
subconscious.
Right, that's sort of subconscious. It's like if you open up another character in your head and you say, okay, this is goodness, and I'm going to do my best impression of goodness and talk to that, right? It's like, and I don't think that that's even wrong. I don't think that doesn't fit within the Christian tradition too. It's like,
for sure.
I think it's like, so you do your best to sort of imagine God, and you have a conversation with that imaginal version of God. And it's like all the images we have of God, like you're not even supposed to, in most versions of Christianity, you're not supposed to draw a picture of God.
Right.
Right. Especially not God the Father. You draw a picture of Jesus Christ, right?
Sure.
But you don't draw a picture of God, like Yahweh, right?
Yeah, yeah. But you can't.
Well, you can't, because what does he look like, right?
Yeah.
You can draw a picture of the burning bush. You can draw a picture of this and that, but it's like, what is it? It's like there's an apophatic sense of so apophaticism is something that I started to learn about through, I'll jump back to Michael Gungor. That was what those meditations were about. And the meditation that I remember, the first one that really stuck with me and that I wanted to keep doing and thinking about was apophatic meditation. And I learned that was like a part of the Christian tradition, just not a part of the evangelical Christian tradition. But
explain that.
Apophatic meditation is, a simple version of that practice looks like, or at least this is the one that they did on the podcast. It was, think about how, I guess you just say to yourself, God is good.
Okay.
Right. And you think about that for a little while. Okay. So what would it mean for God to be good? I guess maybe he loves people. He takes care of them. Probably maybe he makes the fruit grow in the trees, and he gives us all the good things. And then you have to take the next step, and you say, God is not good.
Okay.
Right. And it's like, why would you say that?
Well, because he's everything.
Well, yeah, it's like, it's all those things you just thought of that you thought of, oh, this is goodness. It's like that doesn't touch it. That's not quite, that's not what goodness is. Because there's times when, it's not good for a tree, for trees to be making fruit all the time. It's like there's something that's like, there's a mysterious cycle that seems to be more important than just the goodness or whatever. I don't know. So it's like there's something beyond whatever it is, this definition that you have of goodness that you think God is. It's like, that's not what God is.
Okay.
So you're thinking, oh, okay, yeah, what about all those other ways in which, God, it's like godness is beyond my conception of goodness. And then you start thinking about all those things. And then you have to take the third step and you say, no, God is not good either. He's not all those other things you just thought about that were counters to what you thought of as good. What God is something that's utterly beyond your imagination.
Right.
Right. And that's like that's the meditation. And maybe you can take it further. I don't know, but it's like,
sure.
It's just to kind of put your imagination of what goodness or what godness is in perspective and say, you don't get it. Right. Like this is what it would mean for God to be holy, I think, is that it's utterly set apart from our imagination.
The holy other. Yeah.
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 So it's like, holy other.
Yes.
And to actually do a practice imagining that, like what would that be, is I think pretty helpful. And it kind of, so any image we can have, or any, like let's say we write down a list of commands and we say, this is how you look like God, it's like any one of those might be great. I think probably the best thing that they would do is they would be sort of a sign that point your attention towards, the idea of God. Not to say that God is necessarily an idea. Right. I think God is a being, but
yeah,
it's like, but any image, anything you can say, but I don't want to like,
well, I agree. Everything is just the pointing. Everything is just,
but yeah. I think it goes beyond that too. And I don't think apophatic meditation, is only useful when thinking about God too. It's like, okay, Garrett is good.
Right.
Garrett is not good. Right. Or maybe just any adjective you wanted to use about me. It's like, or Gary, I'm going to look at you. Right. And like any conception I have about you, even like your whole, your face obviously tells a lot about what's going inside you right now. But that's not at all.
Right.
Like, it's like all the conclusions I can draw about you through my interactions through you, or my interactions with you, or my interactions just like taking in you.
Right.
It's like I'm not getting all of it. There's always there's a deeper depth that I could get to if I could set aside whatever conception it is that I've come to.
Right. Right. Because when you take a finite, like it's a fraction, right? You take the finite over the infinite.
Right.
You know nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Essentially. But it's like you don't want to go. So, I mean, people, this is, almost in some sense, I think what a lot of evangelical, especially, I don't know, I was going to say moms, but I'm thinking about, because it's like a lot of, especially the kind of the homeschool moms I ran into on the road.
Okay.
They were very fearful of anything that was like mystical, anything that was like magic, anything that that seemed kind of...
Right, so you weren't allowed to read Harry Potter.
No way, I was not allowed to read Harry Potter.
Got it.
Yeah, that was one among many. I mean, I think there were certain Disney movies I wasn't allowed to watch because there was too much magic in that, right?
Sword in the Stone.
Right, yeah, exactly. You say that as if, did you have this experience as well?
No, not at all. I was just trying to think of Disney movies, and like Merlin's definitely in that one.
There you go, yeah. But yeah, it's like there's this distaste for something, things that couldn't be said clearly, for sort of mystery, because that would be the same, like mystical mystery, right? But even that's where apophatic meditation comes from, even within Christianity, is the Christian mystical tradition.
Right.
So there's always been some, or not, maybe not always, but it's a deep part of Christianity, like the mystical tradition of it. Like, it's like there's always been the kind of exploring of what can't be said about God, because everything about kind of, or at least a lot of what evangelical understanding of God has to do with is being able to kind of make clear statements about God. Is like, he's real, he loves you, and he sent his son to die for you, right? And it was like, it's like, accept these very clear-cut, true things. And if you can accept the truth, which is like statements, if you can accept that they're true, then you will have a transformative experience, and you will be saved from your sins, and you'll go to heaven, right?
Right.
And it's like, I still, whenever I say that stuff, it's like I kind of say it with a wink, because it's like, I don't know if that's wrong, but I just don't think that's the whole picture anymore, Right. And I don't put it, it's like, that's not the center of the way I think about Christianity as much anymore. So going back to the podcast and why I wanted to start that, and obviously I said I was like growing tensions about politics, and then about faith and stuff like that. I was like, okay, I need to figure out how to talk about this stuff, how to have totally different opinions about this kind of stuff than like my family, than my friends, and be able to still be able to approach it meaningfully. Like, it's like, because obviously, like I said, the foundation for it was, okay, if you disagree, then that means it's debate time, right? But I hadn't learned about conversation. Right. I hadn't learned about how, okay, so disagreement means that if we're charitable here, maybe we can actually see something deeper about whatever it is, this thing that we want to talk about. But it's like, that's more of a struggle. That's difficult, because it's not just cranking out a solution. It's like making yourself vulnerable. It's genuinely listening. Yeah, and that's not something I feel like a lot of my media intake is teaching me how to do very well, is actually listen very deeply. Right.
And I think that's what you said about the conversation as opposed to debate. I think that's what Peterson does so well. Someone will say something that is, antagonistic or supposed to be a gotcha, and he literally just, packages it up, puts it on his back, and continues on up the ladder with whatever,
I think he has done that really well in certain circumstances. It's like, I mean, that has been an interest, like watching his career unfold has been an interesting thing for me too, because obviously he was this life raft to me in a dark moment. And so whenever somebody does something like that for you, it's like you start out looking at them like they're a god, like, oh my God, this guy is perfect. He knows the way.
Right. And
it's like, obviously he's made mistakes here and there. He's and I think in a lot of cases he's been humble enough to admit he's made mistakes. But I mean, it's like, I don't know. He definitely has been an example of, and somebody that I was like looking to when I was starting to try to explore learning how that skill set of like trying to have conversations more charitably. I think right in this moment, I think he is struggling a little bit more with it than at certain shining moments in his past where he's really handled conversations super well. But I don't know. I mean, he's playing a really intense game that I'm not playing, right? And so I don't know how I would respond. I don't think I would do better.
Sure.
But like,
yeah,
I can't get deep into like politics. It's like,
do you enjoy thinking about politics and like listening about politics?
Yeah, but it's like I enjoy thinking about politics, and then as soon as I start thinking about it, I start thinking about it on like a moral level or like a philosophical level, right?
Same. Yeah.
And it's like I feel like I can't believe in a particular policy hard enough to like want to advocate for it.
For
right?
sure. For sure. And what terrifies me is the collateral damage that's inevitable with any policy.
But it seems like somebody needs to do that. It's just I don't have the courage to do that because I don't feel like I have the smarts to figure out, what is a good policy. It's just I'm like it makes me wonder about good, interesting questions, but it's like I struggle to like stand behind,
Well, yeah. So where it's led me is that I don't like any politics. Like I don't like, like, like who are you to speak for me? Who is anyone to speak? It's led to a.
So is it like a general distaste for authority then?
Yeah, to some degree, and I know someone who action has to be taken in the world, and structures have to be built, and cooperation needs to happen. But it's just like I just don't want the blood to be on my hands.
Yeah. It's responsibility, right?
Right. Right. Like, anytime you vote for someone, like you look at no matter who you say you voted for one of the two parties in the U.S., say you lived in the U.S. for the last however many years, like you've got, they're dropping bombs in the Middle East. Like there's real consequences to.
It feels like the stakes are too high for me to put my voice in there. But at the same time, there's a bunch of people who are like just acting on extreme hubris. It seems like that they think they know how it's going. And it's like these are the activists on either side of the political aisle. It's like I see these really fanatical people, and it's like they know what needs to happen. It's like, they're gonna vote, but I'm not gonna vote.
Yeah, no. There's no right answer, and there's no easy way. It's just, it's giving me such a disdain for the left and the right dichotomy.
Yeah,
where it's like I think that that power shouldn't exist at all.
Yeah. Well, so one thing I've noticed recently is they're kind of over where I live in Ayr and Brantford. I don't know how the calendar works for elections like on a really local level, but like all the different wards are having
that's
elections.
Going on. Well, it just happened here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe it just happened here.
Yeah. The signs are everywhere, right?
Right. Yeah. But I noticed the talking points and the slogans don't feel as politically charged to me. Have you noticed that? I mean, I didn't look into it that deeply, but
yeah. And I think I think the further you get away from someone running your street. Yeah. And then your county, and then your whatever, or your town, and then your county, whatever it is, the further you get away from the more broad the stroke, the more collateral damage that's going to happen, the more only a certain number of people will be represented in the policies. Whereas, on a very local level, I think that's the appropriate place for politics, if at all. Yeah,
absolutely. I that's kind of where I've landed anyway, as well with it, because it seems like it should. I mean, the problem is I haven't acted on that deeply enough. Like I didn't pay attention, right?
Yeah, same, yeah.
I didn't vote in the ward election. I don't even know what that's called, right? But it's like that's where it seems like there's almost a little bit more space for a healthier conversation to happen about policies and things like that, because for one thing, it should almost matter more there, because those laws are going to affect me and my neighborhood and my community a bit more.
Yep.
And it's like not to be self-centered about it, but it's just like, okay, you have more of a responsibility to the people that are in your life. It's like, okay, if I vote on a policy here, it's likely only affecting people that I could run into and walk into and have a conversation with, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not talking for people that I don't have some means of knowing.
Right.
Right. I can know these people, and I probably do know a lot of them. So I'm sort of more responsible to these people. So it should sort of matter more to me to vote about that, right? I mean, when I think about it, it does matter to me more. It's hard to pay attention to it because, for one thing, there's just so much other shit trying to vie for your attention over social media. Like it's
way more interesting.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's more interesting to talk about Donald Trump and all these different, like the dramatic stuff that's happening in the States.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's the state. I live in Canada. Right?
Yeah, totally.
Why should that?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it sort of matters because we're sort of the United States extended universe. But I mean, there are policies that are more directly and more immediately going to affect us that we could be focusing on, and politics that they're more local to us. So, but it's like there's something. It's like talking about politics is more about the social clout you can get from having a hot take or saying the right or having the right take, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those two. It's either have a hot take or have the right take.
Yeah, I fall into the hot take category. Yeah. I want to go back because the most interesting part of our discussion so far in my eyes was the prayer. Okay. And you know that the balance between the spirit and the dogma, right? Like the revivification of like the actual the feeling, you know, the experience. Like it's called a religious experience.
Yeah.
You know, to have that, and you can't like, and then there's, you know, and then in my, like what I started to do was, you know, you look, okay, meditation, okay, you know, all these technologies, you know, for getting to that place and wanting to have, you know, a way of knowing that, you know, is saying I've had the experience. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you have that desire? Because to me, like prayer just felt so short of that.
Yeah. Well, so I'm following what you're saying, but I didn't follow the question, I guess. But
no real question.
Can I question back at you though? So like,
yeah,
you've like sort of experimented with prayer, or like what? I mean, I guess you just talked about as you know, going to camp, I guess, as a kid.
Sure. No. And like praying every night to God. Yeah. You know, for sure.
Is that something that's like always been a part of your life? Yeah. Like you kind of have a nightly prayer.
Yeah.
And is it like something? What does that look like for you? Is it like so you recite?
It's changed. It's changed.
Yeah.
To more and more, I think of it as it's a prayer of gratitude, and more it's just a list of thank yous. You know.
Yeah.
You know.
Did it used to be a lot more like asks?
Not always. You know, it was very much that, but not consciously. And now it's more consciously that. And then, you know, you always think of prayer as ask, not, you know, you or me, but you pray, please God, you know, let this come to pass. But, it's become more gratitude, and, you know.
But you said that it doesn't necessarily always bring you.
Like, how did religion, like, you know, like, do you believe in enlightenment?
In enlightenment? Oh, well, I mean, you'd probably have to define what
like,
you're talking about.
Do you believe the Buddha was enlightened, or God enlightened? Do you believe that it's possible? Do you believe that?
So that's an interesting question to ask about the Buddha, because that's, I mean, obviously I'm interested in that story. But it's like, that's not my tradition.
Sure.
But I think
you're interested in it.
Yeah, well, I think it's so you said you're a fan of Jonathan Pageau, and he's answered a question similarly, and there's a lot of wisdom in the way that he answered it, I thought. He said that, you know, if somebody asks you, you know, how to get to the hospital, and you know how to get, it's like you start telling them the directions, and they say, well, isn't there another way to get to the hospital?
Sure.
It's like, maybe.
Yeah.
But this is, okay, I've experienced getting to the hospital this way.
Yeah.
And I can tell you this is how I got to the hospital.
Right.
And I can't vouch for whether or not there's another way unless I've walked that road. But I mean, this is the you know, climbing hiking to the top of the mountain of God is the largest endeavor you could take on as a human being, right?
Right.
And so you're not probably going to walk that road twice. You're not going to get to the top and then start from the very bottom again and make it back to the top.
Yeah,
I don't know how.
So well said.
So I don't know if it's possible for a Christian to tell you,
Got it.
Whether or not Buddha was enlightened, because a Christian doesn't practice Buddhism.
Okay, was Jesus enlightened?
Yeah, I mean, that's not the language that Christians use, right? So but there might be an analog there. Yeah. I mean, if we're just kind of,
so what are Christians, like striving for?
Well, so I think that my understanding of that has changed as I've investigated different versions of Christianity, I guess. So I mean, within the evangelical framework, you're striving for a deep personal relationship with God.
Right.
And where you want to get to that place where you feel like very consistently you can sort of hear from God. He's talking to you,
guiding you.
Yeah, guiding you. Like there would be things like so, and I'm again I can. It's funny because I'm sort of doubting my own experiences as well, because it's like there were some ways in which this tradition sort of let me down. Like it didn't have answers for some of the questions that I had asked of it. But at the same time, I experienced things that were very real through it, right? I learned how to, at least according to my peers, sort of listen for God and listen for sort of checks in my spirit. That would be the way they would say it.
Okay.
Which would be like, let's say you're doing something and there might be something about this line of reasoning or this line of activity that could lead us down a bad road. And I don't know what it is yet, but I just got to check, basically God just told me, this isn't the right way to go. I learned to be a little bit more confident saying that sort of, I mean, that sounds like a pretty outrageous thing to say, God told me this. But, some people became very certain, and I at times was certain enough to say, yeah, I think God told me this. And I would say that to my family or to my friends. Like that was sort of the normal way of communicating, right? And yeah, it's like so that's what relationship with God looked like. It was like miraculous ability, I guess, but I mean, there was a lot of language about like deep intimacy with God. It was like it got kind of weird too with the sort of songs they would sing. It would be like Jesus, lover of my soul,
sure,
right? And it was like it got kind of romantic-y a little bit, where it was like even there was memes going around in youth group days where it was like, telling girls you don't need a boyfriend yet. Yeah, Jesus can be your boyfriend.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah.
But let me push back a tiny bit, because you said the climbing the mountain to God.
Yeah.
And to me, like, that is the union with God at the top of the mountain. That is the the desolation of ego. That is the whatever, the blinding white light, like
yeah. I like all that language.
Yeah. Like, to me, or enlightenment.
Yeah. Okay.
To me, that's however you say it, like the goal.
Yeah. So like that is like framing it as like a more of like a journey, like you're going somewhere, and hopefully but I think again, if the apophatic mystical understanding of God is like it's a mountain that has sort of no top.
Sure. No, and I agree with that. Like, it's, again, we're just pointing.
Yeah.
Because it can be now, right?
Yeah.
Like it can just, like in theory, if you could just, like, you could.
Sorry,
you can have that experience.
Yeah. Well, okay, yeah, it can be an experience.
Yeah.
But okay, so I didn't, I guess, totally finish answering the question you asked me.
Yeah.
So what's the goal of Christianity?
Yeah.
Enlightenment. So I was saying what it was to me.
Is it to be like Jesus?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is like I think a lot of the language that I was brought up is still helpful to me if I can be sort of patient with it. But some of it sounds a little bit cheesy to me now. But I think there's still some good stuff there, and it's like partly. I'm trying to kind of re-engage some of it, because I think I was probably just because I needed to see things from a different perspective for a while. intentionally pushed it away, or maybe not so intentionally, just unconsciously I had like a bad taste in my mouth for everything that I grew up with. And so I started to be able to see, I guess, different ways of thinking about. So the Orthodox, like Eastern Orthodox goal of Christianity is a much different framing than, the personal intimacy angle. It's about becoming one with God, which it's not so much the idea of like becoming one through like a deep romantic relationship. It's like becoming part of God. And it's not pantheism, right? I mean, like,
what's pantheism?
Pantheism would be that everything is God.
Okay.
But there's something else that's within the Christian Eastern Orthodox tradition believes in something like panentheism. Okay. Which the slight difference there, and it's an important difference, is that it's not that God is everything, but everything is within, or everything is part of God.
Right.
Right. So it's not like, oh, this cup is God, but it's like, oh, this cup is God.
Right.
But it's like that some things might be able to embody or more deeply. Well, I mean, if you put it in terms of like a mountain, it's like you get to the outside of the mountain or the bottom of the mountain, and it's like that's importantly a part of the mountain, but
sure.
it's not the sort of the most glorious or most insightful place. It's like when you're at the top of a mountain, you can see things from a different angle. You can see more, and it puts things in perspective. It's like It's a higher knowledge, right? It's like you still need the bottom of the mountain to make the top of the mountain work.
Yeah.
But you can ascend the mountain, right?
Right.
And so I think it's the goal of Christianity is like for us to get closer to or again, the goal of Eastern Orthodox Christianity, which I can't totally speak for because I'm not an Eastern Orthodox Christian, but I'm just like starting to pay attention to these guys, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like if everything is already in God, it's like, I guess maybe a realization of that, but it's like a more deeper taking on of that identity, or like learning how to act that out more seriously and more deeply. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's like becoming like God or becoming one with God. So that's called theosis.
Okay.
Right. It's like it's a transformation of yourself into being part of God or being God, but not in a way that it's like, oh, I am God.
No, I get it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, personally, the way I think about that, and I guess, I mean, obviously Jonathan Pageau, I like his language a lot. He's made a lot of he's been another kind of shining light to me in a place of doubt, where it's just giving interesting language, new ways to approach these ideas that make them more possible to more palatable. It's not that he made them. It's like he just put honey on the words and made them go down sweeter. It was like he genuinely was giving a different angle on what these things could mean and how they could be meaningful to your life. Like it's like Christianity doesn't have to just be this tiny little math equation of do this, believe this, and then you get this. Mm-hmm. It's like there's more richness to this tradition, and it was like that's I think what he's kind of done a good job of opening people up to. But I think, oh man, I was just gonna share some great nugget that he had that he had said, but I think I forgot where I was going. But
yeah, no, what you said there was I really like the base of the mountain is no less God than the top of the mountain.
Right.
So it's not so much the reaching for the top or the ascension. The whole thing is equally valid. Yeah,
I mean, that's an interesting problem, I guess, or like it's like something I have to keep coming back to, is like that. Yeah, so if you use the image of a mountain to talk about,
which is totally completely incomplete.
Yeah,
but we'll use it.
Right. Yeah, but there is something different about the top than the bottom.
Right.
But it's like, and it's not like, okay, so all of the mountain is equal. Because I mean, this goes into questions about like equality and things like that.
Right.
It's like, you don't want everything, you want to say everything is the same.
Yeah.
Because it's not.
Because it's not.
It's different. Like, and is the top of the mountain more important? I mean, a mountain without a top wouldn't be very good.
Right.
But
and bring trajectory into it.
trajectory. Okay, so sorry, how do I bring
which way you're going? Are you going up
Are you
or down the mountain?
Well, also that might be important too, because obviously, like within so the mountain picture isn't something that's like that somebody just came up with recently. It's like that's one of the most fundamental images and fundamental parts of human myth making. Whenever we talk about gods in almost any tradition, Christian mythology or Mesopotamian mythology, Egyptian mythology, Norse mythology, or whatever, there's like, I'm pretty sure in Norse mythology, there's always mountains, and there's something about going to the top of a mountain that like you gain insight from there, but then you don't stay there. Like Moses goes up the mountain and he gets these really insightful practices for how the Israelites should be living, and he brings them back down. Maybe just like reading them today, they don't seem that insightful. Some of them seem obvious, and some of them just seem stupid. But in that moment,
probably pretty groundbreaking in that moment.
Yeah, in that moment, it was like contextually, a lot of that stuff was really, really revolutionary.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, it's like, there's all these laws about slavery, and it's like, and I'm not trying to defend slavery.
No.
But it's like these people suddenly actually had rules for the way they had to treat their slaves. They didn't just get to do whatever they wanted.
Right.
They actually had to treat them well, and there was laws now to protect slaves.
Yeah,
that was revolutionary. Right.
So
I mean, yeah. So but yeah, there's an image of going up and down a mountain. It's not just a matter of being at the top of the mountain. And so I think that those images, I guess, are a little bit more whole than a simple idea of just, I got to be more intimate with God. Because that's almost like you can do that on your own. You can run off and be...
Well, right. You can sit in the cave.
Yeah, and so it doesn't. In some ways, it doesn't. I mean, in practice, the way that Christianity worked, it was still a really solid community in some senses. Like there was a lot, at least, of community activity. There was potlucks. There was lots of events. People were really friendly with each other. But the core practices of the tradition was all about me and Jesus. It wasn't really us. It wasn't like. And that's one big difference I've seen, with learning about some other maybe more classical understandings of the way Christianity is sort of supposed to work, is that it hasn't always been just this individualistic hyper-focus on me and Jesus. It's not necessarily just about personal enlightenment, but it's like, so going back to the image of the mountain, it's like it's about going up and down the mountain so that way insight can be given to us, and that we can grow together, or we can know how we should be acting. We can,
right.
And it's like, and that image isn't even like a totally, or that story isn't something that's just like you have to abstract that much. It's like, okay, if you go, I like a good comparison is even, it's like that just shows up in any story. If you just tell an adventure story,
sure,
like like Tolkien wrote, like The Hobbit, right? They get lost in this forest, and it's like super dark, and they don't know where they're going anymore. Right? They're essentially in the desert. They're wandering. Yeah. And so what needs to happen? Well, Bilbo, he climbs up to the top of the tree. Oh, he can see where they need to go. Yeah. He goes up, and when you're up high above things, you get insight into where you should be going. Right. So he comes back down, and now they know where to go. He's given them some new laws to get their lives on track.
Yeah. No, it's definitely true.
I don't know. You said you watched some of my podcast, right? Did you watch the episode with John Vervaeke?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where were you?
That I rented a random office space somewhere near him to make it work.
How do you connect with those guys?
Those guys. I mean,
say John. Like, did you just email him?
Yeah. I mean, he is one of the most. I don't know. I guess he just has more energy for conversations than like almost anybody in the world. Like, because he's doing like the big stake stuff. Like he's going on Lex Fridman. Yeah. He's like, he's having big conversations, but he's also willing to go and just talk to people who have like no subscribers. It's just, if they seem like they have genuine questions, he's just like, yeah, I'll do it. Right. Like, and so I don't know. I don't know why he was willing to come and chat with me. Yeah. I think I just caught him at a key time where he, I guess, had some extra time. Yeah. Or because I think it's the traffic of how many emails he's getting is steadily increasing, especially as he's doing these bigger podcasts and stuff like that. So, I mean, I just reached out. I sent him an email, and I kind of shared some of my thoughts with him, let him know what my project was about. And he said, yeah, I'll do a conversation. So we initially just did a conversation over like Zoom or whatever. And then later on, he came, or he said he was, at the end of that, I said, okay, I kind of wanted to deeper into some of this stuff. Could we do a follow-up, and could I like just come out closer to you, and could we do it in person?
Yeah.
I said, yeah, let's do it. So
wow.
So that was really
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have no idea. I mean, so Ian Mcgilchrist is the other sort of biggest name of somebody that I've been able to talk to, and like no idea why he was, because I mean, I don't think he does a ton of talks.
No, it doesn't sound like it.
But I guess it was sort of that, that Bible story about, maybe you don't, but there's a parable about this woman who knocks on the door, of a judge, and he's kind of a cranky judge that doesn't want to help anybody out. But the woman is just so persistent. She knocks on his door every day. And finally he's like, okay, what do you want? And he's like, I need justice for whatever this is. And he's like, fine. And he does it, right? Sorry, I'm telling Bible stories, but that was the references that I think my persistent knocking may have been the reason that he responded to me, because I did send like 3 or 4 different emails over the course of, this time, and then a couple months later, and a couple months, and I think that I guess they did respond each time, so that's what made a difference. Is that they were like, okay, sorry, we don't have time right now. And I was like, okay, well, when do you have time?
Yeah, yeah, that's good. And what about what are you doing with Curt Jaimungal?
Oh yeah, Curt. I don't know. We just kind of started chatting since I started following his channel and what he's doing, and he's a nice guy. Like I don't know. I guess I'm trying to think about what was. I guess actually that was a similar situation to him and Ian, actually, because I just sent him an email. I was like, hey man, you want to connect? He's like, yeah, I'd love to, but unfortunately I'm really busy right now. He was just a lot more upfront, I guess, very encouraging. Like he seemed like, yeah, I'm down to do this, but I'm also really busy. And so he's like, just email me again in 2 months. And I was like, okay, I'll email you in 2 months. And I did in 2 months. He's like, I'm really busy, man. Could you email me again in 3 months? And I was like, all right, sounds good. I'll just set a timer. And so, but eventually we were able to get to, and I mean, since then, it was like that conversation was sort of interesting. It was like, that was just kind of us, I guess, meeting and chatting for the first time. Yeah. And I don't know. I feel like looking back on it, there was some interesting stuff we kind of got into. But since then, we've just kind of continued. I mean, we may do a podcast again at some point, but we've just been chatting, I guess, since then.
Just
I mean, he's not that far away from me, so we've met up. We've only met up once, but we've just kind of chatted a lot. Yeah.
Huh. I loved your chat with John Vervaeke, and he was talking about being, I guess, religiously polygamous, and you were talking about being faithful.
Yeah.
Because I so sympathize with him.
Yeah.
And to go back to your mountain metaphor, no one climbs a mountain straight top to bottom on one route. You're always assessing.
Well, that's like pretty hard to just climb it straight unless you're like a trained mountain climber, or I don't know, like you're just really, really strong.
Right. But I mean, so for your analogy though, there seems to be different methods, at different points in your life, or different.
Sure. Well, I think John uses the word ecologies of practice.
Right.
Which I mean, he invents so many words. It's hard to kind of keep up with what he means by all of them. And I had heard him use that word for like, I don't know how many different interviews and how many years I've been listening to him talk about stuff. But finally he explained it, and I was like, oh, that's what it means.
Just a collection of all the different practices.
Well, it's not a random collection. Like it's an ecology, right? So it's like an ecosystem, like an ecosystem. I mean, we can see how delicate ecosystems are with how many times, anytime humans like take an animal and bring it to a place that it didn't evolve there, it just totally destroys the. It's like this story. It's really bad in Australia. Like there was like a huge famine at one point because some guy brought in a couple of rabbits because he wanted to hunt them.
I thought it was New Zealand.
Was it New Zealand? I thought it was. I mean, maybe it's both. I don't even know. I think I remember even there. Anyway,
but I know the idea.
I'm pretty sure. It's like just tons of rabbits just destroy everything. And then recently there was like a rat plague or a mouse plague in Australia, and I mean, just around here, right? Have you seen like usually in the spring right now? You just get. I don't know if you've had it up here or out. Is it up here? Which direction?
Both.
Is it right here?
It's up and out.
Up and out. Yeah. But the crazy numbers of these caterpillars, the gypsy moth things.
Oh yeah, they're
have you
insane.
seen those?
They're insane.
That's
Yeah.
not, those
They're an
aren't,
invasive species. Yeah.
but they aren't like, they're not real. I mean, they're real, but like they're not.
You can hear them eating.
Yeah.
You
Oh my
can
gosh,
hear
yeah.
them eating at night. You hear.
But they're not. They didn't naturally. They're not naturally occurring, is what I mean.
No.
It was like some French entomologist or something like that crossbred a silkworm and some other kind of moth.
Oh my goodness, what a
And
monstrosity.
I was like, oh, this would be cool. Yeah, really cool. It's really cool now that it's like literally destroying acres and acres of forest, and it's like, and we don't even have. There's no natural predators for them. You created a bug that tastes gross, and so nobody wants it. So
Interesting. My mom goes to war with those things every
yeah,
year.
it's terrible. So, so I'm saying that because I got into my ecology thing. It's just like, so an ecology is not just mixing things together haphazardly.
Got
right?
it.
You can't just take a bunch of spiritual practices that you like and say, oh, this one's cool, this one's cool. Let's just mix them together like a mad scientist.
Mm-hmm.
But that's sort of how we're tending to work it now when it comes to people who are sort of spiritual but not religious. If you don't want to be if you don't want to be part of a religion and have somebody else making the calls as to what sorts of things you should be doing with your life and how your life practice is going to look,
Mm-hmm.
then it's all on you, and you just it's up to your personal fancy. Like what do I like? I like this kind of meditation, and I like doing this, and I like yoga, and it's like, I mean, I'm preaching to myself here because that is sort of what I'm doing.
Right.
But I don't, it doesn't feel healthy. It doesn't feel sustainable to me. I'm saying
Why?
this
Because of the demand put on you to make those decisions?
partly, yeah, because it's, so I mean, in some sense, I guess you need to sort of trust your own subconscious leanings towards certain things. Like maybe
Yeah.
the reason you want to do this is because you need it.
Because
I don't know,
ultimately any religion was, put together and packaged by someone,
Right.
or
Well,
by a group of people.
So the upside that you get to, so that's the thing, is that when you first kind of put together a bunch of practices together and say, okay, here's my new religion, I don't think people are ready to recognize it as a religion right away. It's just because
Sure.
you're calling it a religion, right?
Sure.
People call it a cult.
Yeah.
Unless it gets some street cred,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the way a religion gets street cred is that it exists for thousands of years.
Right.
Right? And so something doesn't exist for thousands of years, just like any other ecosystem doesn't exist for hundreds of years, or maybe in some cases thousands of years. I don't know that much about ecology.
Unless it works.
Yeah. Right? And so it can't just be a recipe that you made up. I mean, it can be. That's obviously what we're all experimenting with, and we all also seem to be experimenting with varying degrees of mental health problems now.
Also getting to the top of slippery slopes and letting go with our frickin' cell phones.
Yeah. So I don't know. So on one sense, it's just like that is the way our culture works. Is we self-curate. We decide the stuff we want to include in our lives, but at the same time, we're all wondering, why does my life feel so untethered, ungrounded, and meaningless? And it's like, maybe it's because, I mean, for me, where I'm pushing myself is like, okay, I need to be willing to give up some of that individuality and because in some sense, that's what being a part of something bigger looks like.
Sacrificing
Yourself to something bigger, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you don't get the benefit of something bigger and it actually being bigger if you're just going to take a little piece of it and put it inside you. Now it's something smaller, right?
Got it.
If it's actually going to be something bigger, it has to envelop you a bit.
Right.
And I don't think in a healthy dynamic of that means that your agency just goes away and you become a mindless zombie that just takes orders.
Right.
Right? Like a healthy ecology is going to, I mean, actually, I don't know if I want to use that word. A healthy religion is going to look like people in proper relationships that ratio well together, where it's like I'm in connection with somebody who I give a certain level of authority to somebody over me, like maybe a
Like
pastor.
a marriage.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's a good example. It's like the marriage isn't bigger than you if you just use the other person.
Right.
Right. In order for it to actually be something that rules over both of you and keeps you together, you're not just going based on what you feel like doing anymore. You're putting something in stone and saying, this is now a new container that holds us and holds us together, right? It's not a decision that we're going to make every day. It's a decision we're going to make once.
Yes.
And we're going to choose to follow through with that decision all the time, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I think, and it's funny because I think marriage is one of the best analogies for religion and why it's important actually to commit to a community. But it's funny to see that in a culture that is gradually, that has already kind of gotten over religion,
yes,
is like kind of not really into it anymore, that our next step of it seems to be that we're also not really that into marriage anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So because it's like, that's the same thing. I don't want to have some other abstract decision or law over me that kind of prevents my personal decision making. That feels like too much.
Right. But it's actually, and the rationality for that is, well, it's restricting my freedom. Mm-hmm. But too many, as we know in the cereal aisle, too many choices is actually paralyzing.
Yeah. And not only that, but it's like when you get into, even in the cereal aisle, and there's too many choices, you don't necessarily go for the healthiest option. You go for the option that ends up being best at stealing your attention.
Right.
And so you don't actually, if you try not to sort of commit to a relationship or a religion, you're still going to find yourself in repeated patterns. They're just not going to be intentional ones. You're just going to be suffering deeply with many addictions. Right? Like, that's just what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, your 24 hours is still, you still have 24 hours.
You're still looking for repetition. You're still looking for some substance, some sense of identity, and that comes from repetition, I think. It's like, this is what I do, right? Mm-hmm. But it's like, if you can't, I don't know. So I guess I'm implying that if you make those decisions yourself, they're going to be bad. I don't think that's necessarily always true. But I think there needs to be some balance, some ratio between your own decision making and
what has worked historically.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, obviously you look at Christianity and say that worked, like that look at the Crusades, look at Christians now, look at some of the most hateful people out there are Christians. It's like, you're saying that works. And it's like, well, yeah,
well, compared to what?
Right. Compared to what? And also it's like, I don't think I want to try to give some utopian vision for, the way it's like, you want to find a religion full of perfect people or a perfect community, then that's probably not a place that you could viably participate in because you're not perfect either.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah. Who are you to think you deserve to be? Yeah. 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 No, yeah, we are certainly, falling prey to whatever grabs our attention because of our lack of structure.
So you're down to give that to me.
What's that?
So you agree with me there, but
for sure.
But you said that you were finding yourself more agreeing with John Vervaeke's kind of we've got to mix and match a little bit, or like when we got to that point in our conversation, that was obviously something we disagreed on. And not in a way that, I mean, I have so much immense respect for that guy still, but like, it's like, obviously we're landing somewhere slightly different there. He thinks it's possible to, well, I think it's possible too. I don't necessarily have as much faith in it, maybe that you can just kind of start over and just make up your own. I mean, so he still has an intelligent way of going about it. He's not just saying you can mix and match anything. Right. He still says you need to develop an ecology of practices, but he's saying you can develop one, or like he's trying to develop an ecology of practices. But I don't, and it's like,
well, let me try. So, you get your religion based on your parents.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And that is completely random.
Yeah.
So this, what he's doing is he's still trying to, he's still looking at what works.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess I should say he's not, I misspoke. I said that he's trying to sort of make up his own. He is deeply connected to a tradition. It's just not quite a religion. He's right. Like into Neoplatonism, right? Sure. But even if he's more mix and match, he's taking a little bit of Hinduism and a little bit of Buddhism and a little bit of Christianity, and he's looking at what resonates with him in all of those practices. Yeah. He's still looking at what works, and it's what he's doing is creating that ecology,
he's creating the ecology instead of the tradition being thrust upon him.
Yeah. I mean, so that's interesting to say. So, but that he's still looking at what's worked.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the easy argument to push back is just like, okay, well, look at any animal that's evolved right now, and it's worked. It got to this point. Its survival strategy has been viable in the environment that it was in. But if you remove it from that environment and put it somewhere else, it's not so viable anymore, and it disrupts that other environment.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be partly the case, but I think that's still onto something. I think that it's like you should still pay attention to ancient traditions. I mean, that's something that I feel compelled to do. I think it's interesting for me to learn about, and it's like I could have conversations with a Buddhist, or obviously I can have conversations with John Vervaeke, a Neoplatonist. Although I mean that's a little bit more in line with Christianity, considering how much. I mean, there's a lot of Christian Neoplatonists as well. But like I think you can do some of that, but I think it's probably a matter of where does the center of your narrative lie? Is it still on you? Because I mean that's part of what I still struggle with about
I see what you're saying.
About the tradition I even grew up with, right? Where it was so much about me, and even saying so it's about me and my relationship with God. It still felt like it was so much just about me. Mm-hmm. That all the ways I learned even how to pray were very personal. And even it was like, okay, I go through a list of, I pray for my family, I pray for my friends, but in all those sentences, I'm just hearing I and my,
mm-hmm.
and then I look at, some of the most, and I don't think it's necessarily as much of a dichotomy as I'm making it out, but I'm just kind of noticing at least a little bit of a difference that like, okay, something like the Lord's Prayer, you don't say me or I once in that entire prayer, right? It's about our, right? And so it's for one thing, it's taking your own personal identity and lifting you up out of that and into like thinking about Christianity or maybe just humanity or maybe existence. Like who's the our?
Sure.
Who's the us, right?
Yeah.
And then it's all about God and us somehow coming together in better relationship. So it's not about, it doesn't just kind of pinprick around me. It's like this story about meaning and about existence is bigger than me. And it's not about, it doesn't center on my life. It's like my life is being pulled into something that there's a deeper center, there's a deeper meaning that I get to participate in rather than it being just I'm out here in the universe and like I can at least make myself better or whatever. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, but all we can do is make ourselves better. Like I have no control over anyone else.
I mean, unpack that for me. So how do you mean you have no control over anybody else? I mean, like I'm talking to you right now. I'm sharing my ideas, and that's potentially influencing the way you're going to look at the world, right? That's influencing you.
Yeah.
And you're pushing back, and you're making me think about things differently.
Sure, I guess. Like I just think of I don't know who said it, but like all you can offer to the world is yourself. Like your way of being. Like talk is cheap as well, right? Like the
like
way
actions,
you
I mean, I think I think it's probably, I would just disagree with the all. It's like, I think it's just a matter of putting things, like I think when somebody makes kind of a statement like that, it's probably because somebody's attention is getting too caught up in things that they don't have as much direct responsibility for. And it's like, okay, you need to, I mean, this is like Peterson's whole thing was, okay, clean your room, right? Mm-hmm. It was like, get your focus back on the things that have to do with your life. Mm-hmm. And it's like, anytime you get in a place where people have really rejected that, they need a stern talking to. Like, you got to get your priorities straight. But I don't think that getting your priorities straight means the only thing that should matter to you is yourself and your own family and your own house. It's just remembering
where to start.
Right. That's where you start. Yeah. That's not the end of the thing.
Right.
And like, obviously, even if you're like, if you are a full-on fan of Jordan Peterson, you see that that's not what he's doing with his life either. He's
clearly not.
He's starting, right? He's starting with, hopefully he's starting with his own home. It seems like he's got a strong relationship with his family and stuff like that, but he's also trying to change the world. Mm-hmm. So clearly, I mean, you can affect the world as well by talking, by saying things, by spreading ideas, by punching people in the face, whatever. Like,
sure. Sure. But to go back to, say your discussion with John about being having the ecology of practices, or what did you say, ecology of
ecology of practices,
and then you saying, no, you've got to be monogamous and commit.
Is it just down to, do you have to be? Because
do you have to be, because if you commit to the one thing, when you say you believe something,
mm-hmm.
now you've precluded the opposite from being true.
Well, I think it just comes down to the framework that we tend to have. It's like if we are working in a sort of overly mathematical language,
sure, yeah,
and we're talking about believing in things and truth in terms of like math, right? Like it's like, okay, when it comes to adding 2 + 2, as far as the rules of math go, there is one true answer. Right? But as far as me getting married to somebody, right, there are many people that I could be true to.
Sure.
Right?
Okay.
And that's a different kind of true, right?
Yeah.
It's truth, and that's actually where the linguistic history of the word even comes from, is troth, like betrothed.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
So being true doesn't necessarily have to do with reasonably working out in all circumstances, or in all situations you might use that word. Truth also has to do with being faithful to something or someone, right? And so, I'm not saying that, like what you just said. Okay, this is actually, sorry, I'm interrupting myself over and over again here, but this just reminded me that this is a big part of John's project, is that he says, he doesn't say he's an atheist, he doesn't say he's a theist, he says he's a non-theist,
right?
Which is his way of sort of escaping out of that conversation. He says, I reject the dichotomy that atheists and Christians both accept, which is that, either God exists or he doesn't.
Sure.
Right. Or like he wants to get outside of that way of thinking about truth and God's truth.
Yep.
Is that it's that truth is not, these sorts of truths are not about that. And then he has his whole 4 P's of knowing. It's like, you don't just know things by knowing that they're the case. Have you heard him talk about those 4 P's? Okay. So he has propositional knowing, perspectival knowing, procedural knowing, and participatory knowing.
Okay.
And let's see if I can remember all 4 of them, because it's funny, because his main point is that we've so overemphasized propositional knowing that we kind of forget that other sorts of knowledges are legitimate. And so it's harder for me, I think, to remember the other 3 other than propositional, because I don't think about that sort of knowledge as much. I haven't my environment doesn't teach me to think about that kind of knowledge as much, even though it's perfectly real. And when I think about it, it's like, yeah, that's totally real, or that's perfectly legitimate. So propositional knowledge is, whether something is the case or not, whether it's true or false in a very sort of technical mathematical sense. Like, it is the case that I am here in the legendary, what's it called? The legendary
motor car company.
Yeah, I'm here at the legendary motor car company, and we're recording a podcast right now. That is true. That's a fact, right?
Yeah.
That's propositional knowledge.
Yep.
I know that.
Yeah.
Procedural knowledge, though, that's not the knowledge of whether something is the case. That's how to do something.
Right.
So I drove here, but driving isn't so much a matter of thinking through technically, right now, should I shift into first gear, and how far should I? It's not like thinking through numerical values of how deep I should push the clutch in as I'm changing gears, or which it's like there's an element of that, but a lot of it is very much a flowing of things going into each other. And it's like learning how to drive isn't learning how to answer a whole bunch of questions technically. It's about learning the flow of driving, right? So that's not the same kind of knowledge.
Right.
That's a procedure that you learn how to do, and it's stored in a different part of your brain. So it's very objectively verifiable that this is a different sort of knowledge, or it's a different kind of memory, right? So there's propositional knowledge. I forget what kind of memory he says that's in, but he says procedural knowledge is stored in procedural memory. And then there's perspectival knowledge, which is what it's like to be here right now. That's not how to be here right now. That's not whether it's the case. There's a very real sense of here-ness and now-ness in every moment. And experiencing that isn't something that can be summed up by saying it's the case or saying how to do it. It's like, it's just a thing. It's like, I'm knowing that I'm here right now. That's something that I'm doing right now, so I'm knowing that. And what that's like is not, it's not a whole bunch of technical values about your environment. It's not saying that I know the curtain is black and the table is this. It's like, it's more abstract than that. It's like, what does it feel like to be in this room with this furniture and this person? And that's stored in episodic memory, he says.
Okay.
And then, so procedural, propositional, perspectival, and then the final one is participatory. And this one is the most confusing to me, I think, because I don't know if I'm going to even be able to define it well enough, because it seems like it kind of overlaps with some of the other ones in some ways.
Right.
But participatory knowledge is interesting because it's about roles. It's sort of how-ness, it's sort of here-ness and now-ness. It's what I think it's sort of summed up as like, okay, knowing how to be, or having a sort of an identity, a role in the world. So it's like, if I'm somebody, I guess being able to act out that role, no, it's different than that. But it's like, okay, yeah, if you know how to drive a car, you are a driver.
Right.
That's
yeah.
And if you're a podcaster, it's like that's a thing. You know how to put on that hat.
Sure.
And all of the different roles that so I guess it's sort of knowing places in the world that you could step into and be a certain thing. So that's a certain kind of knowledge, is knowing, being able to perceive roles and being able to perceive yourself as somebody who could fit into that role. I think that's how to describe it best. Again, I'm not the one that's studying this or writing about it. I'm just trying to learn from John Vervaeke here. But he says that all of like your whole collection of all of those different types of participatory knowledge that you have as a person is stored in a special type of memory called the self, right? Okay. It's like when you think about yourself, it's like, how do I be in the world?
Sure.
Right. So the first type of knowledge is the propositional type of knowledge. And then there's those other three that we kind of just forget. We don't really take as legitimate. Man, I knew going off on that long tangent, I was going to forget how I got there or why I was trying to explain that.
Well, I think it was just back to the monogamy versus polygamy.
Okay. And the dichotomy of just whether. Okay, so you said there's a. If I say I believe in this God or I believe in Christianity, that precludes that all their religions are false, right?
Or belief in anything.
Well, okay,
like 100%. I get, and I guess you can end up being a probability of sorts.
Sure. Well, so I think it all connects to what we've talked about already. It's like, so believing in anything is a matter of faith, and it's not like the faith isn't like when I choose to take a step forward on the ground, I am acting as if it's possible, as if it's likely that when I put my weight onto that foot, I'm going to stand on it and it's going to hold me up. Mm-hmm. Right. So I'm that doing that doesn't preclude that there are no other possible places I could step. Mm-hmm. Right.
I just it's just that's the appropriate way to do it. But okay, so let me give you this analogy of the monogamy, you as a tool. Religion is a tool, and the tool is a piece of wood as a lever to get your car unstuck. Yeah. And you use it, and you get unstuck, and you leave it behind. You don't strap it to your car and drive around with a log. Yeah,
that's an interesting idea, like sort of expendable tools. Yeah. Okay.
You have a certain type of suffering in your life, and the certain perspective, or maybe meditation helps you create the space in your life that you needed around the suffering, but you don't want to be trapped by being a meditator, and if you don't have the time or circumstances in your life to meditate, you don't want to be trapped as a meditator.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's, in my mind, it's having that flexibility to hang on tightly to a method, but let go lightly.
Right. But so I think that the relationship analogy is stronger than I had initially assumed. I think it really reaches into this discussion pretty well, because so if I were to flip it around and say, instead of talking about tools again, let's talk about people and relationships. It's like there are some friendships that come into my life that get me through a hard time, right? Like somebody really carries me through something, but then, maybe our interests didn't align deeply enough that we needed to be best friends forever. Or maybe we just had a really good conversation, but that's all that needed to happen. So I can leave them behind. It's like, that's not devaluing them. It's just not putting them in the position of being my best friend or I mean, when it comes to like a romantic relationship, it's like, I'm not going to put them in the position of being my wife.
Sure.
Right. But does that mean that you shouldn't have a wife person? Does that mean you should have just because friendship, just because casual friendships can exist? Does that mean that you shouldn't have a family?
Right.
Right. It's like you need to have fullness to your life. Right.
Right.
So I think that it's perfectly okay to, like, I have really enjoyed learning how to do some yoga. That has been a really cool and powerful tool for me.
Yep.
But it's not a central part of my life. It's not my religion. So it's like to me, it's fine to go and try out stuff like that. I really enjoy and have found some deep insights from learning different mythologies and learning stories from different religions, even dead ancient religions that nobody practices anymore. It's like some of those stories are really powerful and they, cause me to think about things in a deep way. It's like, that's not just because, like, appreciating those isn't anti-Christian.
Right.
Right. Like being able to appreciate that another person is a really great person, who's not your family doesn't devalue having a family.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I don't know what I believe, right? I'm just trying to play devil's advocate a little bit.
No, I mean, keep going. It's like this is the frontier of what I'm trying to explore right now as a person too, who's like trying to find their way in the world.
Yeah. Because
I mean, where is this landing for you? Where is it challenging you? Because I see it kind of.
Well, because it's like say you committing to one committing to religion, like one practice.
We're gonna hear that?
No. We're good.
Sorry.
There's always something above it. If it's truth or God is at the top of the mountain, and then the practice isn't it.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. The practice is just a practice,
right.
and you don't. I'm wary of the practice becoming a trap.
Right. Well, and I think that's a really great point. Yeah, because and I think what you're describing is just idolatry. Right.
Yes, I agree.
So it's like if you essentially if you let the practice become the thing, if you forget that the practice is merely a sign, and it may be an incredibly good sign, it may be it's like confusing the path with the mountain.
Yes.
Right? It's like the path might be a really, really good path, but the path isn't the mountain.
Yes.
The path is a way.
Yeah.
And it's like, even that's the language that's already in Christianity, even though that's not necessarily the way a lot of Christians talk about it, is that Christ claims to be the way.
Yes.
And it's like the truth.
It's very
Taoist.
Taoist.
In that, yeah, exactly. In that context, the way, the truth is like the thing that you could trust, the thing that you could betroth yourself to, the thing that you could have a trusting relationship with. Mm-hmm. And that's what life should be like. The way, the truth. Does he say the way, the truth, and the life, or the way, the truth, and the light? I forget.
Oh, I thought it was light, but
yeah, I don't know.
I'm not the guy.
I mix that up.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's like.
So I see what you mean.
It's a good point.
Like that is idolatry, but yeah. So maybe they're not mutually exclusive. Maybe you just have to constantly keep in mind that your method is not it. Your method is not
right. But at the same time, it's like you remembered that, like you and I are both married, right? It's like marriage is really great.
Yeah.
Right. It's not it. It's not like there was, like, I don't know if you believe in the one or whatever, but it's like, it doesn't matter if she was the one, she is mine. Right.
Yep.
Like we're each other's.
Yep.
And this is like, there's something really important and really beautiful about holding on to that and being willing to give myself up to that.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. Yep.
It's like I think we can value religion without being. It's like maybe dogma is necessary. Probably. But I don't think religion has to be idolatry.
No, and I agree, and I think I can't escape your marriage analogy, because I think that's apt, and I think we have one life, we have a finite amount of time, and commitment. We don't have infinite. It's not a video game. You don't get to start again and do it a different way. At least
not that we know.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Right. Yeah. The Hindus might say otherwise. Yeah. But at least in one life, you have to commit to certain things and do it.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to do stuff.
Yep.
Have you seen that there was a kind of a clip going around on Twitter with this guy. He has a graph, and it's like it goes like from 1 to 9 on both sides, and one side is the figure it out side.
Find out side.
Oh, the find out side, right? Yeah. And so it's like, if you want to find out, he reveals the other part of the graph is you have to fuck around.
Yeah, so fuck around and find out. Yeah.
Because let's say if you want to find out a level of 9, you have to fuck around a value of 9 in order to
right. But that's my problem is that religion is going to keep you at a 5.
Is it though? So I
don't know. I don't know.
So so I think what religion is, and this is maybe mixing some. I think religion might be well described as deeply fucking around.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because most people don't.
Because I don't think that level 9 is doing lots of stuff. It's maybe it's doing something really, really deeply.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. I agree. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why that analogy I think comes to mind is like, unless you commit to something, you don't get to discover what it's like to commit to something over your lifetime.
Yeah.
And there's a huge drawback to that, because if you commit to something, let's say like if you make a bad decision and you marry somebody who is a really toxic person or whatever, I don't know, maybe there's a time and a place where divorce needs to become a serious option, but like you don't want to jump there, right? You gotta, like, if you want to find out if it's possible to get through deep struggling with somebody, it's like any marriage is going to be hard.
Sure.
So I don't think super, super early whether or not your level of hardness is impossible to get through. Or,
right. Yeah.
I don't know. So I don't know. I think
I like the fuck around and find out graph. You only get to a level 9 of fucking around through religion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Blasphemy.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, I don't know how much longer.
No, man, we can go forever. But I hope this has been interesting at least, and I hope
absolutely, man.
Yeah. I enjoy these. I don't know. You and I have probably had such a different upbringing, but like, it's so. I love having these types of conversations, and with a willing participant, not just giving someone an ear beating.
Absolutely, man. I mean, you've been fun to talk to, and I don't know. It's like whenever I can think about this again and have somebody ask questions that I wouldn't ask, then I'm gonna see things from a different angle. It's like, I've been messing around with this kind of analogy that's helped me to for conversation. I was like writing something to do with it. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I might try to fish. It was like sort of like an essay thing. I don't know. It sounds pretentious to call it an essay. I wrote some stuff down, some ideas.
Yep.
And maybe I'll put it on my channel at some point. I don't know. But it was about, I was messing with this idea of metaphysical trigonometry, which is, I was just trying to take the analogy of that, like when the reason you can perceive depth with your eyes is because your brain has figured out how to do trigonometry.
Right.
It's figured out how to triangulate between your two eyes. So literally, it's like your eyes are this far away from each other.
Got it.
And so they're seeing how much they have to kind of do this. They're making a triangle.
Yep.
And then they're saying, okay, that's how far it is away, right? But that's broken through the wall of that if you have two eyes, you can literally see another dimension of knowledge about the universe. You've broken into the third dimension by having two eyes.
Right.
Right. And so it's like, I think that if two eyes can perceive the physical world in a deeper dimension, then perhaps two sort of soulish perspectives can break into like a deeper perspective on seeing things. And I think that's a lot of what conversation's about too.
Oh, for sure. And I'm sure that's why you and I listen to podcasts and listen to lectures.
Yeah.
You know, because it's, how many times do you have a response where you,
like, oh, you want to talk?
Yeah.
Like that's why I started a podcast. It's just because I just want to talk to people. I got to tell them what I think.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. It is, yeah, there's so many analogies there, you know, the friction for the diamond, the whatever, the polishing the mirror.
Yeah. Iron sharpens iron and stuff like that. But yeah.
That's good. Thanks for coming on.
Cool, man. Thanks for having me.
We'll do it again.
Let's do it.
Yeah.